Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a new episode in my guide series, A DM's Guide to Descent into Avernus. This is going to be focused mostly on campaign prep. Best tips and tools for you to set up your campaign and make sure that you're prepared for session 1. Now, in this series, we're going to be going through the entire book and going through each encounter, but I think that setting up your campaign is really a critical part of being the dungeon master and making sure that you're aware of all the things you might need to know in case, the players do something unexpected like they typically do. So this is going to be a tip on how to keep yourself prepared and also ways to find support within the community, because there actually is quite an extensive online community for this campaign book as well. Now, as mentioned in the previous video, you should read the general overview of the entire adventure. I think that that is a very easy to accomplish task. It is not that long. The overview is on page 5 and 6 of the book. It discusses the flowchart of the adventure, a description of each of the chapters, and the major plot points. I will leave a link above so you can check out my previous video where I kind of go over all of that. I also suggest you read the chapter summaries. Chapter 1 is 2 pages long. It's located on page 10 and 11 in the campaign book. Chapter 2 is 2 pages long. It's pages 52 and 53. Now, Chapter 3 is the longest chapter summary. That's on page 70. It starts on page 74 in the book. The first 3 pages are the general overview of the story, whereas the next 4 pages or so are focused more on the campaign setting of Avernus, the rules that your players will have to follow while they're there. That would include things like changes to magic, what the characters will need to do if they stay in Avernus for very long. How does it weigh on their conscience? How does it affect them physically? Not necessary to read them, but you might want to also check them out because they're pretty cool. Chapter 4 is located on pages 134 to 135. This focuses on the scab and the area where the characters will be retrieving Zariel's sword. Now, Chapter 5, while it is a short chapter, like Chapter 4, there's really just one encounter that the characters are facing. The finale is a showdown with Zariel. There are various ways that the ending of the book could go down, so I'd say you should probably read the entire chapter. It is got box text scattered between the possible endings, so that there's quite a bit to read, but it does flow very nicely. The setup of it will be a little more challenging, and we'll talk about that when we get to Chapter 5 in the review. But just know that there are quite a few ways that the ending could go down, and reading all of them will give you a bit of a understanding of where this campaign should be going. So all in all, we're talking about 4 pages of background and story overview. We're talking about 10 to 12 pages of chapter summaries and an 8-page finale encounter. So that's really, when you think about it, at the very most you would ever be reading is about 20 to 22 pages. Much more manageable than going through all of the encounters, reading the book cover to cover. So what else should you prep for? Well, I think that you should always start small. The undertaking of a adventure campaign can be daunting, and I don't think that you should plan everything out before you play the game. I think that it's impossible to, predict what the players are going to be doing, so you don't want to go overboard and over prepare, because then that may make you confused. You might be stressed and frustrated with all the reading you have to do, and it's not necessary. I think what you should do is prep for the first session. The first session of any campaign is always going to be more of a railroad. You're kicking off the campaign. The characters don't have any real understanding of where they are, so you're going to be building on that, and because they're not really sure of what options are available, they will probably just go with the hooks that you provide. In the back of the book, there's a section called the Baldur's Gazetteer, and the Gazetteer is basically a mini campaign source book. It gives you a wider variety of locations, some ideas for encounters, NPCs, and it's actually quite extensive. It starts on page 158, but it goes on for about 40 or 50 pages. So you should definitely skim through that. Again, I don't think you need to do that before playing. But if you know that your characters are going to want to go off script, if they're not going to be content with just sticking with the hook that you gave them, then you may want to start including some options for them. I always like to ask my players at the end of every session what their intentions are for the next one. I don't do this like I'm not going to force them to stick with any decision they make, but if you be honest with them and you say, listen, I'm going to be prepping for next session. Where are you going to go next? What's the plan? Where would the group be thinking? And they'll have no problem telling you. And then you can kind of direct your preparation for that, because otherwise in a big city like Baldur's Gate, they could go anywhere. So definitely ask your players at the end of a session and get a feel for what they're intending on doing. Once you know what they're going to do, then you can have some options. The Baldur's Gate Gazetteer has a bunch of different locations, and I'm going to show you them now. All right, so on Roll20 here, I'm going to pull up the sections so that you can see what I'm talking about. But the Gazetteer gives an overview of what it is. It shows you locations. There's some detailed maps, some different pieces of information that are not stated in the main section of the book that you can use to supplement the adventure. It goes through a variety of different topics, like the history of Baldur's Gate. You can see here it gives you a little bit of the founding, the population, government, defense, commerce, organizations, religions, and it gives a little bit of information on each of these where you can kind of flesh out the campaign. If your characters are looking for, let's say they're looking to go to a temple, then you have a couple of options and they're all listed. You can also see the government, which is actually quite complex. They have a parliament. They also have a group called the Council of Four, and that includes four dukes, basically. The dukes have a range of characters, from the very famous Grand Duke Ulder Ravengard all the way down to some of these other dukes who are maybe lesser known, but Thalamra Vanthamper and Ulder Ravengard have a prominent role in the main story. So you will have a lot more information about them in the book, but if you wanted to talk to Duke Bellin Stelmane or Dillard Porter, then you can also throw these into the campaign. There's no reason why you couldn't use them. There's information about them and what they're doing during this time. There's also information about law and order. What will happen if the group encounters guards? Well, there are a couple of different types of guards in the city. There's the Flaming Fist, who are a mercenary group. These mercenaries are hired by Baldur's Gate to keep the peace. They're generally patrolling in the lower city, which is where the poorer citizens live, and they don't treat them very well. Then you have the Watch, who are the group of mercenaries who are hired by the upper city, generally the nobles and the government, to kind of patrol in the wealthier areas, and they will not like if the group is trespassing on the patriarchs' houses and homes. Then you've got a couple of random tables where they'll describe what the interactions with the guards may be. The citizens live there. They definitely have a long description of the types of people that live there. I've heard Baldur's Gate be described as Gotham, like a Gotham City, where it is like a nest of crime. There are nice parts of it, but of course the dark underbelly has some seedier characters. And then you've got the patriarchs, the upper elite of the city. These are the wealthy, the nobles. Their families have a huge impact on the economics of the town, and you can see they even have a list of all these patriarch families that you could pick from if you wanted to interact with them. In fact, in the next video, when I go over the Dark Secret, I'll talk about how these families can actually be tied into that dark secret. And then you go to religion. These, I'm just going through a sampling of some of the things here. I'm not going to go through the entire Gazetteer because it's quite long, but just so you know what types of things are in here, you can see there's religion here. There's all of the types of gods that people might worship, and they also give you examples of temples that you could visit. In my campaign, when a character died, we ended up taking that character to the High House of Wonders, where they were resurrected, where they were healed. And this is something that you might need to do if the characters were to die before they go to Avernus. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of dangers that lurk in Baldur's Gate. There's an organization called the Guild. They're the Rogues Thieves Guild. Each neighborhood or area of the city is kind of under control of different kingpins, and they give you some NPCs that you could use if you're, maybe you have a rogue in there that wants to use its criminal contacts, and you can meet them and get some information in sort of that dark shadow area of the city. There's also the Dead Three, who are the cult that worships the three gods of death, Bane, Baal, and Merkel. Also discusses what happens with murder in the city and what might happen to players if they were to break laws and commit murder. The final area section that I'm going to show you today is landmarks. There's a whole detailed map of different landmarks that you can head to. There's no encounters. There are very few actual maps, and there's definitely no gridded maps for combats or any sort of a fight like that. But you can probably find some on the internet that go along with it. It'll be a nice companion to some of these locations. So again, that's really not something that you want to read through cover to cover. The Gazetteer is really there as a source of information. If you know that your group is going to need a healer next session, go take a look at the religion section. If you know that your group is going to be in trouble because they just accidentally murdered a citizen, then look up the law and order section and find out how the guards would react. Just something I want you to know that's there for you as a resource, something you might want to skim, but definitely, as you go through it, you'll figure out what you need to prepare from it. And the final topic of discussion for this video is the community. As I mentioned before, there's an extensive online community for these campaign books. In fact, almost all of the campaign settings that have come out, I've seen have a social media presence. There's sites like, obviously, Facebook, which has Facebook groups for Descent into Avernus. There's also Discord, and there's Reddit. And those are just the three most popular, I'd say, where you can get a wide range of people playing the game, running the game, other DMs that would be able to help and give feedback and answer questions as kind of like a group think tank here. So let's talk about some of them. In terms of social media sites, I think Facebook is very popular and most people have a Facebook account. This is a way you can use the Facebook groups. There's two that I would recommend: Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus DMs group, and there's also DMs Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. I know the names are very similar, but they're two separate groups. Actually, the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus DMs group has about, I think, 2,000 more members in it, but both of them have a few thousand DMs in the group that kind of pitch ideas. You can post. People post a lot about how their sessions went and get feedback and other ideas. Some people often post their own live streams, which is really cool because you can then watch those streams and see how other people do it. Oh, and also I have my final leg of my campaign on YouTube that you can check out, and the playlist is up above. Links for all of these sites will also be in the description below, so you can check them out. I don't use Reddit as much as the other two sources that I'm showing you today, but the Reddit can also be useful for a similar way that Facebook is. People post there a lot with comments or ways that their sessions went and some feedback. Finally, there's also Discord. There's a Descent into Avernus Discord channel that is really useful, and I like the way that Discord is set up. This Discord has different channels that organize the material into various discussion threads. You can easily find any archived artwork, documents that people post, because as Facebook posts keep coming in, it pushes the material further down. This is much better organized. But again, you have to be familiar with Discord, and it can be overwhelming at first, actually. If you don't use any of these social media platforms, it can be kind of confusing when you first use them, but just stick with it and try to navigate as best as possible. There's a lot of different people there that are willing to help, and if you post something, guaranteed you will get results. People will comment back. Starting a campaign can seem scary, and it can seem really daunting. There's a lot of reading to do, and I hope that what I have kind of showed you today is that you really don't need to read that much. You can get by with reading some summaries and then prepping one session at a time. Really try to keep things simple, try to stick to your plan, and try to ask your players what their intentions are for the next session so that you can have everything laid out and ready to go. I also think using the Gazetteer to supplement the campaign will be very useful. As the campaign goes, it can feel kind of railroady unless you were to do something like that. Now, it also depends on your group. If your group is very new to D&D, or they're a group that really likes to be told where to head and what directions to go in, then you probably won't need to use the Gazetteer that much. And I also think joining these social media groups and Discord channels will provide a nice base of support for you. So you've already got a great start. Now you just got to build on it. All right, that's all I've got for the campaign setup and preparation. I will talk about session 0 and what to do with this group's dark secret, which is something that your group can do before the game begins. As always, if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also hit the bell icon for notifications whenever I drop a new video. All right, everybody. See you on the tabletop. Bye.